Jeremy Whorton, welcome back to the podcast.
Great to be here.
Thank you for coming back and being back on the show. Always fun. I am so out of practice, and the podcast listeners will know that because I haven't dropped an episode in just a hot minute.
Really?
We got super busy with work, which is never an excuse, but it happens, and it just wasn't my focus for a minute. And so now we're back on the road, and I think Andrea noticed I was like all depressed, and she's like, you probably need to get like Strangers going again, because it's probably been about 3 weeks off at least, which is crazy for me. I usually don't do anything near that, but you know, we're back, and I'm glad that you're my first guest back after a little break.
Me too.
So we're here in Kansas City, the home of the Chiefs
yeah
and the Royals.
Yeah
that seems right.
And
we came through town just to come do a little training. I got a client I'm going to see, but just for a little bit. Mostly came to hang out at the gym and get some more good rolls in, good training in. And I've been fortunate enough to come hang out with you guys for like the last week, maybe week and a half or so. And everybody's doing great here, man. You got such great guys here.
Yeah, super fortunate. We just have a lot of good guys that all mesh well together, and the egos stay in check for the most part. And we've kind of created a culture to where they're doing martial arts for the right reasons, and you know, not getting devolved into their Instagram pages and stuff like that. So it's been nice, and like I said, it's great to have. You know, I look forward to having guys like you come in, especially like when you've already been here before. Just having positive guys come in, and you know, it's like seeing an old relative again, and you know, it's just a great feeling as a gym owner and as a coach. Just like for me, it's just everybody coming together. That's when I'm the happiest.
Yeah, so it's great for me. It's got to be the best thing about traveling. Actually, I wrote a full like blog post on our Wild Hickson's website all about how it's actually the best to be like a short-term friend to everybody. Because no one can ever really get tired of you. Because it's like, if you're getting tired of me, I'll be gone in a week. You know?
Remember when you did that thing? Yeah. None of that happens.
I just get to cruise in and cruise out, and it's been, you know, I guess it has been about a year probably since we were here last.
Yeah, I was trying to think.
It must have been
how
April-ish.
long COVID time really messes with you. Like,
yeah, no kidding.
It's just like some things seems like they happened 5 years ago, and it was just like 6 months, and then some things actually happened 6 months ago, and it seems like 5 years ago. So it's just weird.
We're living in a strange time warp right now. I feel that. Although I feel like the older I get, the more everything feels like a time warp all the time, and I never really know what's going on. My lifestyle's really fucky with that too. Like,
I'm sure.
Being in an RV, and then you'll move it, and then you're just home for that evening again. You close your curtains. You don't know where you are. I'll literally wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, and I won't really freak out, but I'll be like, where am I? Because I don't have a pin on the map of the United States at that moment of exactly where I am. And that's a real strange feeling.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You open your door and you're like, oh, nope, not the RV park I was expecting to see out here. Okay. What state am I in again? It's super weird. And even here, I'm bouncing between Missouri and Kansas, just back and forth every single day. So we're restless all the time, I guess.
And that's hard for some people to get used to also, being in Kansas City and realizing there's a Missouri side, and even the president of the United States gets confused. So,
just about this, or about anything else, or just this one.
Nah, just this.
That is weird though. Missouri, you guys have two cities that are just like border cities that like they're literally. I guess it's because the entire state is really reliant on those rivers and was built on those rivers, and so that kind of makes sense to me in a historical context. But it is weird how you're jumping states that fast.
Yeah.
And of course I get to drive by Leavenworth Prison on my way here, which when I first drove by, I was like, is this the state capitol? No, that doesn't make sense. Because it's massive, and it really looks like an old, like kind of Roman type building. Is it weird that I like driving by it? Like that it's cool to look at?
No, it's definitely cool to look at. Yeah.
It's creepy to think about. And I meant to Google like all of the scary people that have been in Leavenworth. Andrea, could you Google scary people who have been in Leavenworth for me? You probably don't have any signal in here. No, but the one thing I was curious about is you guys are out in like Platte City area, like outside of Kansas City. Why was it that you came out here instead of being like a downtown KC kind of establishment?
Well, we were our first gym was up in St. Joe, which is about 30 minutes north of here, and my wife was going to be a teacher and being an administrator, and so she was doing she was coming down here to finish up school, and about the time we were going to get married. So the plan was she was going to be a teacher, and she wanted to be a teacher in North Kansas City high schools, and so she was already living in Platte City to do that, and so I'd planned on moving here, and literally we got married in May, and I think it was July this building came up for sale.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, my wife danced in college. She was on the KU dance team. And so this was already a dance studio, so it was kind of a good fit. And she was basically doing it so I'd have a nice martial arts building. I don't think she really had the intentions of becoming a full-time dance studio owner, but that's the way it worked out.
Yeah.
She kind of kept the lights on,
Yeah.
Especially the first 10 years. So yeah, like that's how we ended up here. And me at the time, being pretty ignorant, like I thought, oh, we'll have 2 schools and it'll be great. And yeah, two schools was really hard to navigate. And so, but we did it and kept going. And then it got to a point where it was too hard to keep that one up in St. Joe running. We had a lot of good fighters, and I was mainly keeping it open for the fighters that we had.
Right.
And my brother was running that school, and it just got to where everybody was moving down here anyway, including my brother. And once we knew we were going to become 10th Planet, we were like, let's consolidate everything down. And I wished I would have done it years earlier, because it just made everything easier and better, and and more sound. So.
It's a cool space. I really like your space here. And it's set up in a way where you guys have all of the MMA stuff that you need, so that it can still have like a strong MMA presence in the gym. And what one of my favorite things is actually the mirrors, which I didn't get at first because I hadn't seen mirrors. And of course that was, I assume, because this was like a dance space.
Yeah.
But they're actually massively helpful when you're trying to watch someone give instruction, which jiu-jitsu is kind of 360, and so many places you have to walk around to the other side of the instructor to see stuff. No big deal. But with those mirrors there, you can really see everything that's going on. You can see the instructor saying, on this side, I'm doing this, while on this side, I'm doing this. And I kind of dug that part.
Yeah.
It.
We've considered, especially when I had a student go through one of them, we kind of considered getting rid of them and just walling the whole place. But yeah, like especially for stand up, it's really a useful learning tool.
Yeah.
Like I can not only to see everything, but to actually like have them punch themselves in the face. Like that's just an easy way to teach them and keep everything in line, and have space between their legs where they can see them doing the move. So yeah, we decided to go ahead and keep it, and it's worked out okay. So
yeah, well, let's talk about stand up, because so I came to my first stand up fundamentals class last night. Good God, I mean, it's a lot like the jiu-jitsu. It's funny. I listened kind of to the episode we had done before, and that was me talking about being brand new to jiu-jitsu. I think when I had come here, I was probably 5 months in or something like that. And I still feel brand new every day, but it's different, it gets a little easier. And last night, it was like I went right back to the starting line, because you're just showing us some really basic stuff of what to do with my feet. And then I'm realizing that I have to think about my head and all 4 limbs all at the same time in order to do something technically right. That's incredibly challenging, man.
Yeah, it's one of those things. To me, the difference between someone coming into jiu-jitsu and somebody coming into stand-up is that especially with movies, we've watched stand-up. We have an idea of what we think stand-up is. Our body has an idea of what stand-up is. We've all, especially as men, we've all, been in our room alone and like pretended that we were fighting somebody.
Oh, for sure.
And we felt great. Like we felt like we were throwing punches, and I could, but when you actually do it, like even if you're not, usually people say, well, it's harder to hit somebody. Even when you're just doing it in front of somebody who knows what they're doing mechanically, it's so hard. And people have this idea of what stand-up is, and then they find out that they're totally wrong, and they totally don't realize how technical it is and how much of a science it is. And even some fighters, like, that's what kills me is the mistakes I see, even the top level guys, like just the basic mistakes of movement, mechanics. And, you know, the nice thing about stand-up is you can practice it on your own, which is hard to do in jiu-jitsu. And I used to think that jiu-jitsu was a lot harder to get to a high level on, but now I'm almost starting to shift back the other way. The deeper I'm at a point in my coaching career where I'm looking at stand-up a lot different, a lot like how we have, you know, we talked about it last time, the mental shifts that you have in jiu-jitsu, where the way you're thinking about jiu-jitsu is way different at a blue belt level than it is at a brown belt level. And it's getting that way for me in stand-up. Like, it's not just about punches or kicks anymore. That's kind of like the boring stuff. Like, to me, is the spots that you're standing at, the angles, how you're manipulating. That's a big thing to me now, is how we're manipulating our opponent and what he's going through, and how every little movement that I do affects him and gets him to where I want him to be. Like, and so my focus, or my enjoyment, has really been in the stand-up realm the last 2 or 3 years. Not that I don't love jiu-jitsu, I still do, and we're still doing new stuff. It's just the stuff we're doing on the stand-up side is getting really complex, and it's really interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, you've got one of your fighters is about to have his first pro fight, which is James, who I am having on the podcast this week.
Oh, cool.
As well, which I'm nervous, but I might need a bleep button for him.
Yeah, for sure.
If I get him talking about certain topics, it's a little dangerous.
Or a mute button.
Yeah, just a little mute. Like, all right, go ahead, wrap it up. All right, and now we'll let you back on. Yeah, no. So, and he's here, I mean, every day. Like that's someone who's really dedicated himself to this. So I'm excited to hear his story too, because I know he did not start as a person who was in shape at all, or had any of this. So I'm excited to hear what he's got going on. But speaking to stand up, so I feel like one of the things I was least prepared for. So I haven't been in a fist fight with anybody before. I managed to make it all the way through school without doing any of that kind of stuff. I had. Yeah, no, not a fist fight with anybody. I'd certainly been picked on and thrown around and stuff, but never to a point of like throwing a punch on someone. But the part that was strange to me was you didn't have us, working on a bag or pads or mitts or anything yesterday. It was really like it was slow, open palm, trying to hit someone's head basically, and they're going to block it with their arm. And that I feel like that was harder for me. Because if you had put a bag in front of me, I feel like I could have understood things like reach and things like that. But as soon as you have another person standing in front of you, it all goes out the window. And I found myself standing way too close, not realizing like, oh, I have really long arms. I need to be standing much further back. Just really basic stuff that I would never think about. And it's started for me. I think I'm going for it now to get more into striking and stand up, because I really love jiu-jitsu, but the thing I always feel about jiu-jitsu is like, why did I start this so late? And I have a chance to not start so late again with striking. So I think I'm going to try to get into it and get it going.
And like I said, like, striking to me is, you'll get competent at striking a lot faster than you would at jiu-jitsu. But then, once you get competent, when you're going up against experienced guys, I feel like that's where like it almost gets harder at that level, if that makes any sense. But yeah, just like we talked about, like, people don't realize there's so many facets of stand up, because you have timing, which is a huge thing, and that's a hard thing for people to understand. Distance, range, and like I said, we all, just like I was telling you last night, like, a person's brain, when they go to hit somebody, they're thinking, I have to get to them. And the first thing your brain does is tell you to take your head towards them. Right. And everybody does it. And it's hard. That's why we were working last night of connecting your hands with your feet. And I was kind of removing your arms out of there so your brain wouldn't think about you hitting something. Instead, you're focusing on your legs moving back and forth, which is what moves your arms and your shoulders and keeps you from letting your head get into a bad position. And then, same thing, like we're probably one of the only gyms that start people off with no gloves on purpose. And one of the reasons I do that is, for one, people for MMA, they learn proper defense, which is, having your hands pressed against your head. And even then, it's hard to get people to do that. Like, they want to, like, for some reason, be blocking out here. And it's like, you don't have 16-ounce boxing gloves on. There's going to be little tiny gloves. From a marketing point of view, it would probably be better for me to have people wear gloves, because it's like you're talking about with your experience. Like, if you could have hit something, you would have probably felt pretty good about yourself. You'd have probably felt really good about the night.
Yep.
But I don't want that to happen. I want you to understand how off balance you are, because you're not hitting something, or, and you have a person and you're hitting a more precise spot. You realize how incompetent your mechanics are and everything. But then again, I've had a lot of people quit just because they want that feeling of hitting something, and they don't feel like they're doing stand up because they're not having gloves on and they're not hitting something.
Right.
But I'm like, that's the way, that's the best way. And it makes the guys from the very beginning understand control. And that's the main negative. And I know other coaches will probably say this too. That's the negative for me about teaching stand-up, is once we get to that level where we're sparring and stuff all the time, that's an art in itself too. Like, you have to learn how to spar with other people on a regular basis. And there's some gyms that they beat the hell out of each other all the time. And we were way ahead of the game on that. Now you're starting to see how the pros in the UFC are just like, you had Max Holloway said he quit sparring, and he quit sparring hard. And then he had one of the best performances he ever had. You had, I'm trying to think of, I'm horrible with names, but
I'm not going to be able to help you on that.
You had a UFC champion who literally hadn't sparred for like 5 years, and he's competing at the top level. And so, like, guys are starting to understand that, like, I can't take head trauma all the time, and it's hard because you want to mimic it as 100% as you can. And we've always, it took us, first year we went 100%, and we realized that our learning curve was just extremely slow. Whenever we slowed it down and had control, you're not working from a fight or flight context, and so you can actually slow down. Your brain can start making those neurological connections and stuff. And
I mean, if you need to throw hard punches, you can always come hit a heavy back, right?
Exactly,
I mean, you can always get the workout in, but that's not necessarily going to help you. I mean, and I think if you had put gloves on my hands right away, it wouldn't have been all encompassing, because I would very quickly forget my hands are hands, and I would just think of them as fists. And that's not a well-rounded MMA strategy, because, I mean, especially for me right now, if it was like tomorrow, you're going to go have an MMA fight, I'd be like, well, I'm not going to throw a single punch. I'm going to rely on my jiu-jitsu, because that's all I know. And as soon as you would close my hands, I would forget. I'd be like, oh, I can use these to grab someone too, can't I?
For sure.
It would be a real mental block. But tell me more about, so you said it's one of the easier things that you can learn on your own, that you don't need a partner for. But in what context? Like, what can you do to keep learning? Because that's what I'm going to be doing.
Technique-wise, and I'll give you, we actually made, we did this years ago. We actually have a stand-up guide where we just give you little tips to where, if like you're doing shadow boxing at home, you can focus on that one thing, and it's probably going to correct a lot of bad things. Like, number one rule is shoulder hits your face on every punch. So it's like, every time I do, if I leave this, that's the problem that beginners have a lot, is they don't let their opposite shoulder go backwards. And that's why your head goes forward or tilts to the side. That's a big indicator that you're not rotating your legs, which isn't moving your shoulders. And so if every punch my shoulder hits my cheek, probably all those good things that I want to happen. And if it doesn't, that's probably an indicator that something's wrong with my mechanics.
Okay.
Whether I'm not letting my back foot pivot around or I'm not pulling my opposite shoulder back. And so, because that's all your techniques are, is just habits. And like jiu-jitsu, it's hard, you know, even if you have a grappling dummy, because you kind of need that thing you're going against to move in a certain way to be able to drill the technique.
Right.
And it's like with stand-up, you don't. It's just you. It's, you know, nothing is touching you. So you can practice it all day. Like, you know, I always tell my guys that, you know, we'd be working on kicks or side kicks or something. It's like, I used to do this at the grocery store, standing in line at the grocery store, flexing my foot, working on that little part. I was like, people probably thought I was crazy, but like, you know, you can get those reps in all the time. Like, you know, and, you know, whether it's just turning your fist over or keeping your elbows in. And so technique wise, that's why I said it's very easy to get competent very fast. Like you can, I can have you hitting pad focus mitts and looking very good, even after about 2 or 3 privates. But like, you know, when you get to the sparring part of it, you know, you'll build timing and you'll get good at that, really good, as long as you're being coached in a certain way. But then when you go to the pro level and that guy was taught right, like then it gets really, really tricky, because then it becomes, I think a lot of things that I don't see a lot of gyms work on is strategy, like tactics, like how are you going to move to implement those weapons. And like I see even at the UFC level, I just see a lot of guys that they look like they're hitting focus mitts. And it's like, you know, you don't stand in one spot, you don't leave your head in one spot and hit those focus mitts. Like eventually you're going to run into something. Like you're trying to get to we're here, our system, we're always trying to get to where for one, number one thing is to be powerful. We want to be powerful no matter where we're at. And we want to be in a position to where they're not powerful and it's very unlikely that they're going to counter us. That way we can swing away with reckless abandon and not have to worry about, you know, our head running into their fist, especially the opposite direction. So a lot that goes into it that people don't think about.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. And it's funny to me, like you're right how your mindset changes like all the time and at different places in your development with like jiu-jitsu, where I think about it totally different these days. And it's the only reason that I keep coming back, because I abandoned a long time ago, which is good, the idea that I would ever be good at jiu-jitsu or competitive or a competitor. I'm totally okay without that. Like I know that I come here for myself, and I've talked plenty on this podcast. I don't have to get into that. I come here because it makes me better. And then because the more I do it, the more fun I'm actually having doing it. Like not because I'm getting so good, but because as you just get little degrees of better, you can actually start to relax and just have fun. And you can start to see like all these cool puzzles that you're making. And there is no workout like it. And so when it comes to like practicing jiu-jitsu solo, it's kind of boring. Like there's lots of great workouts out there, and I just can't bring myself to do them all that often, because I'm like, this isn't what I'm here for. Like, you know, if I just want to go play, I just want to go wrestle, you know? It's hard for me, I'm sure. And that probably is the difference between me and that someone who has the real competitor mindset about them, that they like train on their own because they're going to come in and be the top person. I'm good. I just enjoy myself. But I wonder about the striking side of things too, because I'm also kind of a nerd when it comes to violence, and just like learning how and when violence is useful. And I've watched so many videos of various types of fights, and you know, you watch fight videos, 90% of the time you just leave. Like that would be not even 99% of the time. Yeah. You just like leave. Yes. Because you get your mindset right. And I think even culturally, we're not in a really good place with that right now, because, you know, obviously, well, I don't know. This is dangerous territory. You know where I'm going.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
Maybe there was a recent example. If anybody can think of one, let me know. I can't seem to come up with one.
National TV.
Maybe there was a recent example. Sure, maybe it was on TV of someone who you know, resorted to violence as opposed to reason, or as opposed to dealing with words, which is not good, you know, traditionally in the way I see the world, that would not be good.
It was very interesting to see how the conversations at. I was really surprised. The thing that surprised me was the types of people that defended it, and it shocked me. I was just like, because in any other situation, like, I'm pretty sure you would have said this was bad. And then, you know, like, a lot of guys from our world that are fighters and stuff like that, I've hardly seen any of them say, you know, oh yeah, I would have done it. I would have defended my wife.
Right.
And it was like,
I've talked about this a lot on this
it's kind of the
podcast
shift, yeah.
too. If you engage with violence, you're far less likely to want to use violence because you get used to it. I go to so many different gyms, and I'll see a dude that is like 5 feet tall. You know, I'm a foot and a half taller than that guy, and he weighs 100 pounds, and then he'll destroy me because any preconceived notion you have about violence can always be thrown out the window in any conflict at any time. And, you know, I had Tim Larkin on this podcast, who I mentioned far too often, and he wrote the book When Violence is the Answer. And he talks about great examples where people will bait someone into a fight, making it look like we're going to have some sort of fist fight, you know, and that's when they take that shot to pull out their knife or pull out their gun. I saw a video on Reddit the other day of a dude who it seems like he's kind of baiting this other guy to punch him. So the other guy punches him, and then this guy pulls out his gun and shoots him 3 times. And it's like in a bar, you know. So this guy thinks we're having a fist fight. Meanwhile, this guy goes, "Oh, you just punched me. Now I'm going to shoot you." So anyway, the point of what I'm saying is, like, 99% of the time you walk the fuck away from any sort of violent encounter. And I've been able to justify jiu-jitsu as like the answer to this riddle. So maybe you can help me with this riddle where striking comes in, because what I understand about jiu-jitsu is often going to be the answer if you can't walk away, as in someone has cornered you or grabbed you. They've taken away your ability to get away, in which case jiu-jitsu would be really useful, because if someone grabs you, that's the start of most jiu-jitsu or wrestling. But where does striking come in for the average person who thinks self-defense like I do, where is that striking going to be an important element?
Well, like you said, most of the time your encounters, if something bad is going to happen, it's going to start on the feet, just like fights start on the feet. And just the fact that you have a sense of balance, you know, which that's what I always stress to my guys, is like, lots of law enforcement encounters where they start getting attacked, and it's like, or just street fights in general, you can tell when they're not trained how they can't even throw a punch without falling off balance. Like, you'll literally see guys throw one punch and fall off their feet. And so just having that by itself, of if you had to throw a punch, that you're not going to fall down or stumble in, and that happens to cops all the time too. But you have a sense of balance. You have a sense of distance, which is super important. You have a sense of defense, and that's one of the reasons that we don't wear gloves, is so you get that sense of defense. And like, actually right off the bat, your first class, someone the whole time is touching you at your face, which us as human beings, we're not used to. I remember Frank Shamrock said that's the most, that goes against our human instincts more than anything else, to have something thrown at our head and for us to calmly dodge it and then look to come right back into that thing. It just is overriding our nervous system to the max. And so just having that awareness, and just the act of violence ourselves, like, you know, there's, you know, just like in that book, like, talk about, like, you know, if a person, like especially females, have never struck anything. And so not only physically is that something, but psychologically that's a trauma in themselves, because they've never let themselves be violent. And so just having that alone will help you and give you a little bit of an edge in a dangerous situation. But the main thing is like, I don't want to go to the ground. Like, bad things can happen to the ground. Once I go to the ground, I'm trapped. You know, it's, you know, law enforcement, that's why it's super important that they do jiu-jitsu, because they have no choice. Like, they have to stop that threat, get it under control. The best way to do that is through jiu-jitsu or a weapon, you know? And so, but for the average person that's wanting to get away, you know, if all you're doing is jujitsu, like you have, you really don't have a threat that involves you not touching them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or touching them for a split second, you know? And so, yeah, you might be better at not getting taken down, but you know, you never know. Like there might be stuff around you. You might get tripped up. And it's like that's the reason it's important to know jujitsu. But if like I can strike you or know a way to strike you and I make sure that you don't get close enough to grab me anyway, that's a huge advantage over just having jiu-jitsu by itself.
Yeah, I like thinking of it like that.
And especially if there's multiple attackers too. That's the other thing people don't realize.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if it was Ensign Inoue was talking about, like he got in a street fight and took the dude and had a rear naked choke. Or no, it was somebody he knew. He was telling the story. And so the guy just took him down, got him in a rear naked choke. And then one of the guy's buddies kicked him in the head, knocked him out. And it's like, you know, jiu-jitsu is great, but it's really great for one person.
That's a really good point.
It's not the best for multiple people.
That's a really good point. Well, thank you, because that's what I needed, because I get motivated more by that than I do by any form of competitive anything. I don't know. I'm just not a competitor. It's not who I am. I'm good with that. I'm a competitor at other things. Like I'm a competitor in business, but when it comes to fighting, I'm good.
Yeah, but I don't think it's you're not a competitor if you're not a competitor of other people. Like you're still being a competitor, because I'm the same way. Like the only reason I competed was just because I didn't want to be the guy that had never been in a cage and telling my guys to suck it up, right. You know? So that was really the only reason I fought, was just because, so I would have that experience if I wanted to do this, you know, for the rest of my life. You know, but like to me, like jiu-jitsu especially reminds me a lot of like skateboarding and the X Games, how it's like you're competing against people, but like even the people that you're competing against, if you hit a cool move, everybody's going to celebrate. Like if it's, you know, like at we went out to qualifiers, Noe went out to qualifiers at headquarters for the CJJ, and that's when that double buggy choke happened.
Right.
And it's like, you know, like everybody celebrated as a gym. Like it didn't really even matter who won or lost, you know, or that it was a big comeback. It was just something new happened to elevate the sport and something that we had never seen. So the sport is the most important thing to all of us. It's not necessarily if we're beating you or my team's better than you and all that stuff. When it comes down to it, we're all trying to elevate the sport, and the sport is the thing we love. And like the only other thing I really see that in on the same level is skateboarding. And you know, when Tony Hawk hit the 900, it's like everybody, you know, everybody lost to him, you know, but everybody was super happy, like, right. You know, and jiu-jitsu, as far as the competitive sports where you're physically going against another person, that's the only other sport I can think of that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I've met some of those guys though that are just competitors.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, to each their own. I think, you know, if that's what gets you here, that's great. But the truth is, I've broken down why jiu-jitsu on so many podcasts at this point. It gets hard to keep covering that ground and have anything new to add. And frankly, my guess is that people who don't listen to this podcast for the jiu-jitsu stuff probably skip the jiu-jitsu episodes. I don't blame them for that, because a lot of times we get to the same place, kind of the same end thought. It was how this changes you and how this improves you. But the thing that sort of makes all that theory interesting is that every time I train jiu-jitsu, I meet some of the coolest people ever, because those things are true, because the way that it changes you is factual, and it creates really interesting, awesome people. And I don't even think it's for the reasons that a lot of people ascribe to it. I don't have the words for it just yet, which I think is why I do the podcast, because to me this is practice in trying to describe these things. Because a lot of people want to attribute it to ego, killing the ego and all these different things. But I think it's about, like you said, making achievement an internal thing. And how many great quotes are there about, like, you know, compete against yourself, not against other people. And to me, if you get on board with that, and you kind of have to if you want to keep showing up here, because outside of a rare few, most of us are going to suck for a really long time. If you embrace, compete against yourself and become better within yourself and keep showing up to be better than you were yesterday, this is the place to do that. And so the people that stick with it tend to just be really cool fucking people.
Yeah, and I think you kind of mentioned it, but I think when you boil it all down, the main reason that people that do jiu-jitsu end up coming to it eventually in any conversation is ultimately, I think the people that really love this are in love with truth by itself. Like, I think that's the big thing with jiu-jitsu, because like, especially starting off, like, you know, I've been doing this for 17 years. 17 years ago, there wasn't hardly any MMA gyms. There were definitely no jiu-jitsu gyms, you know. And so, but like all of us few people that had gyms, we all seemed to have the same views on a lot of stuff. And I always I noticed that right off the bat, and I always kind of wondered why. And I think that's what it is we were just the type of people that were like searching. You know, now everybody talks about hacks and stuff like that. You know, it's a big term thrown around, but like we were all searching for the truth, and like we knew the truth wasn't what we were taught, you know, as far as traditional martial arts and all that stuff. We knew there was something we needed to figure out, and that's what people come into jiu-jitsu, like they know that there's something that they don't know, and you know, and they might not even realize that's what they're doing, that they're searching for a truth. But it's not only the truth in the sport, but it's the truth about themselves. Like we all, like you said, we all suck. Like we all suck in some, and it's, I think whether we admit it or not, we're all looking for something to tell us that we all, yeah, yes, you do suck. Like, and it's okay. All these people suck too, and they're trying to figure it out just like you. And it's like, we'll figure it out together, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be fun. And we're not going to care about what we look like and how many times we get beat and how foolish we look, you know, or how long it took us to learn this simple thing that our coach has been yelling at us about for the last 2 years. Yep. And now we finally popped in our head and we get it now. Like, those are the best feelings. There's the best feeling for coaches. There's the best feelings for students when they're just like, you know, you've told me that 10 times and it never made sense, and now it does. Ultimately, that's just a search for truth, you know.
I fucking love that. That's so, Andrea's nodding her head too, because this has been, for whatever reason, for over the last month, we've just been really deep in philosophy. That's like what's been going on. It's part of why I haven't been doing the podcast, to be honest, to listeners, because sometimes I feel that it's hard for me to come talk about concepts if I'm in turmoil and trying to figure some things out philosophically. Like at the end of the day, so much of this podcast has been because I have an interest in philosophy, and like conversations are where you dissect things and get nuance and try to piece together right and wrong, good and bad in all of its forms. But I really like what you're saying about that. This is what you're doing is you're testing premises. So the premise is that, you know, is there a better or worse way for humans to interact with each other? And what's interesting is that we're using violence to understand reason, which you'd think of as sort of opponents. You'd think like, well, reason and violence don't go hand in hand, like just like us laughing about a situation where someone didn't use reason and they resorted to violence instead. But in fact, when you use violence as an experiment instead of as the answer, you can actually test reason. And you're right. I mean, when I've been to a lot of places and sat around and talked to a lot of people, and you ever sat on a good like nonprofit committee kind of thing, or a good like university style committee conversation?
I haven't, my wife has. But
yeah. You want to talk about where things are not happening logically. And what's strange is I feel like there are more logical conversations going on after a good night of rolling, and we're just like sitting around chatting, because it's a room full of people who we just fought. We don't have to fight anymore. So if I think you're wrong about that, I'll be like, no, here's why you're wrong, you know, and then we end up having all these wild conversations about it. And I kind of like that about the 10th Planet thing. It's become weirdly the home for all of the conspiracy theorists and all these people, because there's something there. You're right. There's something pursuing checking your premises and understanding things, understanding truth. And it does attract that type of person. It also attracts, like anything else, a good amount of cynicism. And that's the other thing I've been wrestling with lately. I love, I actually really like Reddit. I'm just a lurker on Reddit. I just read comments instead of, I don't ever feel like I need to interact with, strangers on the internet in that way. But the conversations that happen in the sort of BJJ subreddits on there are fascinating, because people will be trying to talk about something that they feel or something that they're discovering, and you'll always have someone, not just someone, a group of people jump in and go like, you guys are always trying to make jiu-jitsu like mean something more. Like we're just coming here and wrestling, like relax. And I understand what they're saying. I want to laugh about it too, but I can't help it. Like when I come here, the ways that it affects me and a lot of guys that I talk to, it's far deeper than that. Like it profoundly can impact you. So where do we go with that? Like, are we being stupid when we're thinking of it as like this high-minded thing, or
no? It's it's just like you said a bunch of times. You don't know why. Like you don't, and it should be like that for a while. And it's like, as far as like, like what you're talking about on Reddit, like you have it's just like like everybody brings up the ego, how we're destroying the ego, but what's the big deal about the ego? The ego really means that we feel like we're different, we're separate than everybody else. And that could be good or that could be bad. The ego is not a bad thing. Like if it wasn't for the ego, we wouldn't have all this stuff we had.
I'm the defender of the ego. Anytime anybody says,
and so everybody, like when they say ego, they're thinking selfishness, but no, like, I mean, you need those competitors. They're driven by their ego. Like, you just can't deny that. And so it's not a bad thing. Sometimes it can make a person seem crazy, like Goggins talks about all the time. Like, yeah, if you're going to be a high level dude, Michael Jordan talked about that. Like people are going to think you're crazy and mean and everything else. But it's like, no, you're just driven to be the best at this one thing more than anything else in your life. But it's like, you're searching for, you're really searching for truth. You're not, and when you're searching for truth and you're getting that deep in the stuff, one of the things that can happen is you get a God complex. And so then all of a sudden you reach a level where you think you figured it out. And that's what you see in the jiu-jitsu world. They're addicted to the hacks, and they love the knowledge that they've acquired. And if you're a gym owner, you've had to deal with it a million times, but you'll have the white belt coming in that's watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and he instantly starts trying to teach a blue belt.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not necessarily coming from a bad place, because he just loves this thing so much, and he loves the fact that he learned all that stuff. But that's where the ego comes into play, is where it can trick you into thinking that I have to show this. And I've been that way before. Like I've overstepped my lines, and it's like, my brother has too. And it's just like, it's just a part of the growth too. It's like, you got to calm down and like not be worried about showing everybody how much you knew, and as a coach too, like, how many times it's happened to me where I've taught this guy a million times. I've told him not to do that. Or I've showed him this move, and then somebody else shows it, and he just acts like it's the first time, and it was the most, and it's just like, it kills you inside, but you just got to realize that's a process of learning.
Yeah.
And so, it's just like, sorry, I keep saying,
I do know though. Yeah, so that's good.
But when you're searching for truth and you're accumulating knowledge, just like we talk about the belt ranks, it's like your brain changes, and there's going to be little hiccups, and you're going to be like, you got to check yourself. Like, you got to be like, dude, it doesn't matter if everybody knows you know this. You don't have to like get into arguments. Like one of the videos I have that's got the most views, I called something a ninja choke. And literally the reason it's got the most views is because I think it was only like 3 or 4 guys got to arguing whether it was a ninja choke or not, and they just went down the list forever. Like I had so many comments, and it was just those guys arguing. I didn't have to do anything, and I'm just like, keep arguing, go ahead.
Some people make a personality out of like knowing more than the next guy, which I've never really gotten.
And it becomes so important.
Yeah.
Like it's like, guys, who cares?
Yeah.
Like there's moves that have a million names. Like each gym's called it something else.
Right.
Like, is it that big a deal?
Right.
Like
it's one of those things. There's no disrespect to anybody in the military, but every time I've interacted and gone on like military bases and things, it seems like there's a weird competition going on about who knows more about how the military works than the next person. It's a very strange thing. I've seen it a lot of times. But I think it's all, I think what we're talking about is nuance, like shades of understanding and really like it's semantics too. Like we have such a shit language for communicating any of this, and then we made it shittier because we took away things like inflection and like talking to people in person. And so now our shit language that was already shit is happening online, and then you're limited to 140 characters, and now we're really fucked in terms of understanding something. But it's like how, you know, you hear these things. I don't know if this is true or not, but the thing everybody says is like the Inuit language has like lots of different ways to say the word love, and we only have one. And their version meant so many different things. It could be like brotherly love, it could be romantic love, like all these different things. And I think that the same thing happens with us too. And ego is probably one of those words, because I don't think I'm referring to the same thing when I say the word ego that other people are referring to. And I don't know which one of us is right either. But you know, the ways that we're trying to affect the ego is different than what people see as sort of what they would call greedy, or what they would call selfish, or what they would call big-headed, or all these different things. But someone with a strong ego isn't an asshole. Like that's not how that actually works. Not in the way I would define ego, at least.
Well, it's the way that people look at violence too. Like one of the big, you know, quotes or lines that are being used in all these montage videos of the Jordan Peterson, where he's talking about, you know, a violent, you know, a good man is a violent man.
Right.
And it's like, and that hit so many people, especially in the MMA world, because I think it's just because it was the perfect way to express what we believe. Because you know at training, like the most dangerous guys in the world, they never get into a bar fight. No. They would never worry about, you know, they would never go up and slap somebody because they said something about their, you know, like, and it's like that's not because they don't have the ability to. It's just because it's the opposite. They do have the ability to. They do realize how bad things can get out of hand, and they also realize that it's not worth it. Like because again, going back to they've probably learned more truth in reality, and because violence is reality. Like nature is violence. Nature is ugly. Like that's what I feel like the problem we're having now as a human race is like we've kind of forgotten. We've kind of romanticized nature. And we've kind of that it's just all beauty, and you know, now we have videos of bears and tigers cuddling with each other and stuff, and we like think that that's how it is, and it's like, no, it is violent, it is nasty, it is ugly as ugly can be imagined. And it's like, so violence is reality in our world. And so when you are an expert, or you have, you know, devoted a lot of your life to being involved in violence,
which you would call truth too.
Yeah. Then you've gotten to the truth of life. And so a lot of the emotions, a lot of the bad characteristics, a lot of the mistakes that people make don't get made by those people anymore. You know, they're more relaxed. They love things more than, that was the one thing that I had to get over the last few years. And we probably talked about it last time, is like, I realized that most of the people I know in MMA, like most of the black belts that I'm friends with and stuff that I talk to on a regular basis, like they're protectors, like, you know, and by what I mean by that is like, just like myself, like I've always been, even before I got into martial arts, I've always been a non-confrontational person, both verbally and especially physically. I went through high school, never been in a fight. I've never been in a street fight. I've been in one altercation, and that was just to end what was going on. And so like I've always been that way. And so I'm just kind of like, well, you know, just like most people, like how weird is it that I'm the guy that's leading this team of dangerous individuals and teaching them how to be even more dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize that's what it is just like I'm more worried about protecting others than myself. And like most people in the MMA, like just like the wife thing, like I understand that to a point because I've had people do horrible, nasty things to me, and I don't care. I'm friends with those people again. I've forgiven them. Like I've had them back at my school and stuff. But if somebody does something to my wife, or somebody does something to a little kid, or somebody does something to an animal, like I will become a confrontational person. And people will see a side of me that they don't ever, ever, ever see. Like hardly anybody's ever seen me mad, like in what I would consider mad.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like a lot of that is just because of me delving into the world of violence for so long that, man, I've seen everything. I've seen everybody talk so much. Like I kind of joke about it with my guys. Like I can tell within a few seconds, I can even tell just by them wanting how much they want to talk to me, as far as coming in as a new student, whether they actually are going to join or whether they're not. And like most of the time I've had so many times where people call me and I know the only reason they called me was to tell me about their experience that they had fighting. And I could care less. Like, you know, I don't know you. I don't care about your old martial arts that you did. Like, I want you to come in and do martial arts with me. That's it. Like, it doesn't have to go beyond that. Like, I've heard everything. Like, I've seen everything. Nothing you tell me is going to impress me. Like, it's going to be impress me if you come in and you're cool and you're willing to do whatever I tell you and you say yes, sir, and no, ma'am. Like, that's what's going to impress me. Like, not anything you've done in the past.
Right, because that's about whether you have control over yourself or not, you know. Are you self-possessed? Are you, and that would be a good ego, in my mind, is someone who like the ego is just wanting to exist, like wanting to survive and actually wanting things, you know. And in this case, I think we're talking a lot about wanting to know the truth. I like the nature example you had too, and the more we've gotten into hunting, the more I've learned that side of things too. Have you ever seen the Nature is Metal account on Instagram? Oh, I gotta show you this sometime. It's just all these really gnarly things happening in nature, like various animals eating other animals, or you know, I think there was one with like a deer that's like half his face is gone, but it's still been just sort of living like that for quite a while. You know, it's just that's more the reality. And I saw something else that was good online that was someone was saying like they had pictures of the war over in Ukraine, and they said this isn't actually the anomaly of human history. And they had a picture of like a suburb, and they were like, this is the anomaly of human history. Like, this is the strange thing. And so when people accept that, you know, new version of comfortable, there are no bad things, and everything should be relaxed all the time, and we've got this all figured out, we've got this all sorted, there is no violence, and there doesn't ever need to be, and all those different things. It's not real truth. It's more comfortable truth. It's playing pretend though, and people have their lives shattered when they don't understand that real violence is out there.
Well, and look at what's going on in society right now. Like, there is a lot of important people believing a lot of crazy things, like to the point of pretend, you know. And it's like, it shows you the spoiledness of a society. Like, when we don't have anything to worry about, we don't have to worry about food, anything else, to where we're just like arguing over the most petty, like, you know, Ukraine's a good example of like, you think they're worried about the stuff we're worried about and arguing and trying to pass laws over and stuff over here. Like, they would love to come over here and have our society right now, you know? And it's just like, we've gotten to the point where things are so easy. We have people getting massively intense over like stuff pretend. And back to like schools too, like, you know, I'm sure as far as the truth goes, like people searching for the truth, like I'm sure you've been at schools where the school was very culty and very culty atmosphere. I was just talking about with one of my guys, and about a school that was kind of that way. And it's like, to me, again, that's where the searching for the truth, just like religion, like it got to a point to where it was like, we found it and this is it, and you're going to experience it and find it the exact same way.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're out of here, you know. And it's just, and then you get that culty type of atmosphere, and then all of a sudden it's not a cool vibe. Like it's not a bunch of people searching for the truth on their own. It's you listening to the truth.
If you ever run into someone who claims to know the truth, run away as fast as possible. Is sort of
Absolutely
a good rule of thumb. And that's not to say that you can't run into people who are confident in the things that they know, but to never be able to admit things that you don't know, or to admit that you are benefited by interacting with other people who know things you don't know. That's what really is quite deadly. Yeah, I think. Oh, there it goes. I knew that was going to happen any second. Sorry, folks. Mike is trying to escape the table. I think I can fix it while we go. But it totally interrupted my train of thought. Yeah, I mean, someone who has never been hungry in their entire life, and I'm talking real hungry, is not going to be thinking about like, well, how is our food transportation system doing? Are we all good? That thought is never going to cross their mind because they've never had to face that challenge. And so the more comfy you become, and I think that it's a responsibility as a human to expose yourself to the less comfy things so that you get your priorities back right again.
I think that's another reason that, like, it's, and it might not be, but it seems like, camping and tiny homes and van life and all that stuff, like there's a reason that stuff is becoming so popular again. And I think it's people are wanting to get back to a simplistic way of living and kind of, strip stuff down to what is necessary, what is really necessary, instead of like, because I feel like there's a lot of fakeness in the way people are doing that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
no, there really is.
Yeah.
Believe me, I see it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So we just went camping out in Texas, and when we were there, the weather was really fluctuating, just like it is around here right now. And so we would have 80-degree days where we were off grid camping, and we'd have 80-degree days where it was hot and uncomfortable, and then we would have the next night it would get down to 20, and so how you manage that, and we're there we have a limited supply of water that we have to go get water if we want water. We have a limited room in our tanks to put down dirty dishwater or flush the toilet or take showers or whatever. The power has to be replenished every day, and we're lucky enough to have a generator, right? So even that is like luxury living, to have a generator that you can run and then run the power, run the AC for a minute, and we took all those things. We did that I think we did it for a little over 3 weeks, right? And then as soon as we left and got into a campground, I was like, wow, it's so comfortable here. I can use as much water as I want because I'm hooked up to a water line. I can use as much power as I possibly could ever need. I can run all the appliances all at once. I can put as much water down the drain as I want. I don't have to constantly run out to get more propane so that we can stay warm at night, because we can just run a space heater now, and I don't have to run and get gasoline so that we can run this generator. And it's so good to do that every now and then. And I mean, we did it in a luxury way. To me, it's not like I was out there backpacking around, so don't at me about that. But even taking little things away from what you get really accustomed to makes you appreciate those things just all the more once you get them back. And I think you're right. But I think we have to simulate that for ourselves. I think it's everybody's responsibility to be like, oh, that's where that comes from. Go hunt one animal and watch how that changes your appreciation of where the meat from the grocery store comes from. Because you quarter out an animal and you're like, oh my God, that takes forever, and you don't even get that much meat depending on what you're getting. And it's so much work. It makes you appreciate everything else more. And I don't think we have to walk around feeling like grateful all the time either. Like that isn't the case I'm trying to make. Like it'll make you more grateful for how plentiful things are. Like, no, it'll just make you realistic. And so when someone tries to have a nonsense argument with you, you'll know, like, actually, I'm pretty sure the food situation is going to need to come first. We're going to need food and shelter and power and things like that. Let's address those first. And then, so it's like understanding a hierarchy of needs, like from the ground up, again, if people don't understand that shelter is at the bottom and food comes after that and water and all these things, you know? If people don't get that at all.
And it's like that's the thing is like you're, not to bring it back to violence, but you see how people are ignorant where our food comes from. There's literally people out there that think it comes from the grocery store. Like they have no idea that it came from a real animal, or how much transportation, how much work went into getting that food to that store. And it's like, so when you look at that in the context of violence, like you can't imagine the ignorance when they've been seeing nothing but movies that are the fakest, like not only moves, but like in terms of, oh, I hit you once and then you just fall down
and you were knocked out for an hour too.
You just have no injury, no energy anymore, like a video game. Like it's just like you just get up at this magical time and you're all right.
It's ruined movies for me, man. Martial arts has ruined movies, and Andrea gets so annoyed at me because I can't watch that and just be okay anymore. I have to watch real specific movies. Like The Accountant is. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
That is really solid.
Very underrated movie.
Totally. It's awesome.
I don't know anybody you're the first person that's brought it up. And I remember when I watched it, I was like, this is the old school way of action movies. They need to bring this back.
It was awesome. And then the one I just watched recently was, it's called Nobody. It's Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah,
and
that one too.
Like the violence is good, but he's kind of stupid because he does some dumb posturing things. Like at one point, he has a gun and then he decides to take all the bullets out of his pistol, and because he wants to fight these guys by hand, which is fine. He wants to fight them by hand. Fine. It's dumb. Like nobody who does violence would ever do that, but he's got something broken in him. What are you gonna say? Oh, Warrior. Yeah, but that's an actual like MMA movie. But I value that they had like real jiu-jitsu in that movie. That's the one with Tom Hardy and
I can't remember
the other guy.
One of the black belts I have here. We were just talking about that movie.
But I can't watch any other action movies anymore, man.
Well, just like the worst one is John Wick 3. Like they're all chasing to kill him. The first fight scene happens. He kills a bunch of guys with guns and then walks out of the place with no guns. And it's like, who would do that? Especially a hitman. You would have grabbed every gun you could. It's like you have a whole city of hitmen looking for you, and you just left without grabbing a gun. Like that would never ever happen.
One thing I like about Tim Larkin is he says like a violent encounter doesn't have necessarily a good guy or a bad guy, at least not when it's happening. It's got a winner and a loser, and you need to win.
Yes,
you need to win. So but so again, as amazing as I think jiu-jitsu is, and I do think it's really useful from a self-defense perspective, I think everybody should have a basic understanding of grappling in their lives, and I can't imagine how many more people would be safer if they did have some idea of grappling and what it really is like to tussle with another human, as opposed to what they see in movies.
Or just how well adjusted they would be to society. Like that's the one thing I stress when we're teaching the kids is like the kid doesn't realize it. He's not looking at it a philosophical way at all. Like they're just having fun and doing this thing that they think is cool. Yeah. But it's like, just like the Jordan Peterson quote, that's what you're doing to that kid. Like you're conditioning him to be used to that, to contact and stuff. And like when you're teaching the kids, like the first time especially if you have them spar stand up wise, like I've had kids just cry, and it's not because they got hurt. It's just like they're not used to the intensity of somebody attacking them and they can't do anything about it. Yeah. And like that right there is psychologically trauma. There has to be some type of breakthrough at some point there. Yeah. And it's like just that in itself can change your whole life and how you deal with people and how you look at life, even if you're a kid and you're not looking at everything philosophically and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if yesterday doing stand-up fundamentals here was the first time I had ever done anything, I would have been so upset. I mean, like, I don't know, jiu-jitsu somehow was more gentle my first day. Something about the stand-up made me feel really stupid. But because I had done that before, because I'm more used to sucking at stuff now, I was like, oh yeah, I sucked at that. That's okay. because you just get used to it, and you should be used to it. We all should be.
You get a perspective of time too. Like time's a tricky thing to where, we get tricked into wasting it on one hand, and then we get tricked into thinking that something is going to take way longer than it's going to take. And jiu-jitsu kind of teaches you that too, like how sucky you were in the beginning, and then 3 months later, like all of a sudden, like you still feel that way. You're still getting tapped massively, but you've acquired so much knowledge in that 3 months, not just technique wise and knowledge wise, but just how your body moves. And then, then as you get to your second year, then it becomes more about improving. Like, hey, I've gotten here, I've tapped out a lot of people. Like, I know what the game is now. Now it's just getting better at that game. Mm-hmm. And so if you make it to that point, well, then, like, when you go to learn something else, you're going to realize that, like, no matter how bad I look, like, that's what kills me is, like, just like James, for example, like, we still make fun of him. One of his, I think it was his third amateur fight, because his ground and pound was so horrible, like, just untechnical and stuff. And now it's like, he would look like a destroyer. It would look night and day. Like, you wouldn't think it was the same person to see how he punches now. And it's just like, all that took was time. Like, it wasn't like the ability wasn't there. It's just he's a guy that comes to class every single day, even when it might be boring and he might not be learning anything new, but just he's getting the reps in, he's getting that coordination down, and there might be one little thing that he doesn't realize he even learned that day, but he keeps coming back, whether he's hurt, whether he just fought, or whatever. And if you do that time, doesn't take very long to get extremely good at something.
Yeah, and to add to that, it doesn't even work just in degrees of like getting better steps at a time either. It's that you get better even as you're failing, and there's something to accepting that. So like when I know I'm about to roll with the purple belt, I'm super aware I'm about to die. Like it's not going to go my way. That's just not how that's going to go. But what can I learn during that roll? Like what could I practice during that role? What could I be proud of during that role? And it's so rare because the range, at least in my experience, because the range is so broad in any gym, I'm rarely rolling with people that are like exactly where I'm at. And those are really fun rolls, by the way, because like I rolled with a dude in Florida where we went for like 25 minutes straight. We just kept going because neither of us could get the upper hand to finish it at all. Most of the time, though, you're rolling with someone who you are sort of obviously better than, or with someone who you are obviously worse than, in my experience. And so there's no real pride to beating the person you know that you're better than, and there shouldn't really be a big loss to losing to the person that you know you're worse than. Those are both okay. That's exactly where you are. It's just an assessment. But then what can you focus on in both of those things? With someone you know you're better than, don't just go for the one submission that you know you can hit. Like, why wouldn't you try that crazy thing? You should. It'll give you some experience with it. And then with the person you know you're going to lose to, work on that one defensive thing that they just keep getting past and just try to make that one thing better. So even as you're failing, you're still succeeding in something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
oh, yeah.
I think it's a business concept that, do you know that, shoot, I forget the name of the guy that I was quoting in that presentation that did the Dilbert cartoons. Scott Adams.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Scott Adams.
I used to watch him a lot, yeah.
He's an awesome dude. Like, he has some really cool perspectives.
Yeah.
And the one thing he says is never pick something that you're just going to fail at. Pick things that you can find successes in. So, and Andrew and I do that in our business all the time. If I'm going to make something, I know it's not going to be a huge success, but like I learned how to use this new camera in this new way, then it was never a failure to begin with. I think there's something there in this gym too, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like the best way to learn is through failure. And you know, now it's become a pretty good theme thanks to Joe Rogan and stuff on, you know, strife and how we're meant to, you know, go through stress and stuff like that. But, you know, it's just like we have our curriculum now, you know, which you've been through a lot of it. But we have a rotating 4-month curriculum for that's our path to get blue belt. Like you have to pass all 8 tests to be eligible to get a blue belt. And we've had a problem culturally now is like people just aren't taking the test, and like they're getting to the point where I would really like to give them a blue belt, but it's like we're trying to stick to our guns and be like, you got to pass these tests. Like you got to know this terminology and
Why
stuff.
are they doing it? Because they're afraid to fail that test or something?
Honestly, I don't think it's that they're afraid. I just don't feel like, I feel like they're kind of like we've been talking about. They don't really have an ego to accomplish anything. They're just, they love the sport, like, and they're competing and winning tournaments and stuff. So it's not that they're afraid. Like they just, I don't know. I don't think they understand the importance of it. Like they're not in it for the belt, you know, which is a good thing. I'm happy about that, but I still want them striving for it, you know? And so that's one of the things that we've tried to explain to them is like, these tests they're designed to fail. Like we almost want you to fail the first time because as soon as they take the test, whether they failed or not, we show them all the stuff that they messed up on. And most of the time they know it. They just didn't know it as well as they should have. But when that happens, they're going to remember that mistake probably more than the techniques that they knew to begin with, you know? Like I always tell, like I used to work at a grocery store and it was like, you know, I kind of have a photographic memory and like people could blindfold me. I could walk down the aisle and touch an item. And but the things that
circle back to that.
No, the things that I remember the most was when a customer would ask me for something I didn't know where it was at. Like especially if I had to ask 2 or 3 more people and we search around. Like the one I remember the most is cattle juice. Somebody asked for cattle juice and I thought they were pranking me. I was like, what the hell is cattle juice? I've never heard of cattle juice. Sure enough, we ended up finding it. You know, every store I worked out afterward, I knew where the cattle juice was.
What is cattle juice?
I have no idea.
Is it like a type of beverage or
it
was
always on the top shelf. It came in a almost like a Coke bottle size and it was yellow, but I never.
It's like a soda.
No. It was for cooking.
Oh, what?
Yes. Yeah.
That's super weird.
Yeah, super weird, but it existed. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, you make me think of 2 things there, which is one is that like when you're tested, someone's going to point out the thing you're weak at. That's inevitably what's going to happen if you test on something, you know, and people want to be like an expert at it before they bother taking the test. You know, it's like a video game thing, isn't it? Where you want to like get your level. Andrea used to do this when she played Pokemon. She told me where you get your level so high, so you just too high, and then you'd go play something that was supposed to be competitive, like a boss, whatever. I don't know anything about Pokemon.
I don't.
A trainer, right? That was supposed to be difficult, and you just smoke them. A gym leader. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what happens is like you should go into things a little bit not quite ready, right? Because that failure is going to be a good thing.
I think with my students, it's kind of like you run into this as a gym owner all the time is like guys are like, especially if they're old students, they're like, I'm going to get in shape and then I'm going to come in. And it's just like, no, dude, like you come in and then you'll get in shape. Mm-hmm. Like don't wait for something. And I think that's kind of where their mind frame is a lot of times is like, well, I want to make sure that I'm going to pass the test for sure.
Yeah.
Like there's just a few more times I want to take this curriculum and then I'll take it. And it's just like, no, dude, just jump in.
Yeah.
It takes 10 minutes. Like, you know, you'll have a good time. It's not, no one's going to be there laughing at you. Like, just do it. Get it over with. Like, so now I have one of my blue belts just badgering them all the time to take the test.
I'll do it while I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I'll probably fail your blue belt test. Your white belts were really giving it the other day. I was in trouble. But I'm feeling better too. The funny thing is when we get to a new place and it's been a minute since I've trained, my progress is just gone. I'm like, shit, because we were in Fort Worth and I was just doing a couple open mats and that was like all I had going. So I can keep enough in shape, but then as soon as we move gyms and then I can come here and I can come every day and I'm like, oh, it's all coming back. Okay, cool. But at the very beginning, it's awful. It feels terrible every time. But I think that I don't want to lose this point here, though, just talking about my own nonsense, because there's something in that test that is like, it's like you said, it's like truth. It's like an objective marker. It's like this marker doesn't move for you. So you're either going to pass it or you're going to fail it. And we're seeing that disappear, right? I mean, in competition, it's disappearing. And of course, this isn't even a new argument. This argument has been happening for decades now, the whole participation trophy argument, right?
That happened a long time ago. It's just getting worse.
Yeah,
it's just like we're just taking the option to fail away from everything.
Right.
To where it's like, high school students are graduating high school without even knowing how to read, if not to mention do basic math. Like, college degrees are becoming more and more worthless because they're basically not learning anything that has to involve in a job or the real world. Yeah. And it's like, so we're just removing the option of failure more and more and more. And I think that's a big reason why everything is getting divisive and people are so angry when life is really pretty good, compared to what it has been in the past. And it's like, like you said, like this point in history, like the weirdness in the world is how good things are. Like they've never been this good at any point.
Anomaly. Like read any history at all, this is an anomaly. But they can't read because they can't read. Yeah, man. There's something objective here that is really crucial, and people are definitely lying to themselves about it. You have to go through it, and I think Andrea and I felt the same way. We're somewhat intelligent people, and so you go through a public school system, and you're never challenged. There's never. I don't think I had a B in school. I should have had a B at some point in school. I'm not that smart, but I learned how to play that system, and that's fine. And then the same thing in college. It's just like, how did I keep my grades there? It meant no one was challenging me. The bar was so low. And I'm glad that I took on the chance to become a beginner at this, become a beginner at hunting, become a beginner at a lot of things, traveling, because I suck so bad at all those things, and I have to deal with myself. And it's not ego death. It's just understanding your own ego and understanding like, oh, I had some misconceptions and I better clear those up, because people get too far without clearing those up. And then they experience failure for the first time when they're like 40 and they can't handle it. That's not when you want to experience failure for the first time.
Yeah.
Or like, it's not really even 40. It's like when people get out of college and they're like, oh, it's not all coming together, is it? Like I didn't have anything put together. And that's when they just drop off and fail. Because the real world has objective standards for now.
And to get back to the truth, I think that's, people ultimately, that is being afraid of the truth. And, you look at like how much censorship is starting to come back and how like you have college students, burning their campus down to keep somebody from talking. And it's just like, why wouldn't you, if they're wrong, why don't you debate them? Like, show that they're wrong, like face to face. Like why do you want to prevent them from talking? And I think it's ultimately like they're afraid of the truth. Like they're afraid of having their reality shattered, and that's what failure is for. Failure is to show you that you were wrong, that you didn't have, like you said, that marker that to go to the next step. And I think that's what's really hurting us in society is when you get to a fundamental level, like just not having enough stress and enough failure. And it's what we're meant to do. And it's making us into unhealthy people. Like depression's going through the roof. And, we have everything handed to us. We don't have to worry about food. We don't have to worry about shelter. And you're having so many kids not play sports now too. And it's like, so you're not dealing with a lot of pain, like just even physical pain, like that still matters to something. Like, and it's like, you're sitting down in the basement playing video games and all you're getting is sore thumbs. Like, man, like I feel, I've had a lot of damage to my body, and luckily I haven't had to have any major surgeries, knock on wood, but it's like I can't imagine going through life not having that,
Yeah. And I mean, there's even nuance there too, right? Because it's like you said about head trauma. It's like, well, most sports are probably good. Maybe not football. It might not be the best place. Like that one I kind of dig, because I'm like, but again, everybody can do whatever they want. The question is if a kid can really consent to brain trauma before they understand what the brain is.
That's a really hard one for me. I loved football. Football was my world.
And I think it changes people. I think it makes for some awesome people too.
But knowing what I went through, like I had a really severe concussion, and that was before everybody, not to give my age away, but like that was before the dangers of concussion were widely known and talked about. And I mean, I was back on the field. Like, I mean, I forgot over a half of the game. And I mean, I was in every play. Like when we were watching the film Monday, and like you could see when it happened because I didn't move. I was outside linebacker and I didn't move like the first 2 plays. And then like it kept going and going, and I was sitting there like going, "Oh my God!" Like
you're tripping balls.
I don't remember any of this stuff. Like So that one's a hard one for me because like me and one of my other guys talked about it. Like if I had kids, I couldn't let my kid play football.
I know, right?
But it's like that also kills me because my kid probably would want to play football worse than anything else in the world.
Hey, Andrea, could you take a few photos? You texted me? I'm not. I knew Michael Vick had been at Leavenworth. I didn't know Machine Gun Kelly was at the federal penitentiary.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
I guess things are going well for him now, right? Isn't he?
Yeah, he just
engaged to Megan Fox, and he's living the dream now. Well, what's the positive note? Because I feel like we ended on a sad note of like no one's getting tested. Now here's what I think is what I'll take it with is because of jiu-jitsu and hunting and a few other things that I deem to be really hard, at least very hard for me. I have met people who want to challenge themselves and are challenging themselves, and I think that is growing. It's just among a certain sect of the population, and I hope that continues to grow because momentum is a factor here. And it's not like people can just keep martial arts gyms open if no one's coming to the martial arts gym. You know, there have to be enough people engaging with hardship in whatever format that is. We can't. Hunting lands will go away if no one's there to fight for the hunting lands and all these things. So that's my hope, is that the momentum can build and people can come back to that truth.
And I think you're seeing that. Like I said, I think there's an a yearning for that. Like, you know, you're seeing a ton of women do jiu-jitsu now, you know, with Medusa and stuff like that, and the UFC, like you're seeing women being elevated in violent sports, and it's beautiful. Like, you know, we talked about it last time. I would rather see a female jiu-jitsu match than a man's most of the time. Like, it's just way more exciting to me, and I just think that's why people are yearning for that failure, yearning for and that's like, you know, Tough Mudder and stuff like that. That stuff's getting super popular, and it's like that stuff doesn't make sense to me. Like, you know, learning this sport where we're trying to break each other's limbs and stuff like that makes sense, but going and running through mud and stuff, like to not even get a medal and going underneath barbed wire and stuff, like on your Saturday, that's how you want to spend your Saturday. I'm just like, okay. But I think that's getting popular because people are realizing as society that we are getting soft, and we're needing to get back to nature and that animalistic world, and let our reptilian brain kind of take over every now and then. And that's, you know, everybody talks about balance now, but usually when people, just like the ego, when people think about balance, they think about sitting, meditating and stuff. And it's just like, that's like a small part of life. You can't sit there and meditate throughout the day. You're never going to do anything.
You have to like things.
Yes.
I mean, that is the positive side of the ego to me, is like, without any ego, you don't like or want anything. And if you don't want anything, you will never do anything. And you have to like things in order to sort of fight for them. And so the more that we don't care and are uninvested in everything but, you know, in real things and real experiences, the less that we are fighting to keep like our individual rights. And that's a problem.
Yeah,
so,
because without ego, you have no passion.
Absolutely.
And nothing from the smallest thing, like, you know, shoestrings or anything like that, it came because of passion. That person, you know, like if they just had the Uber show on Showtime, and it's just like, that's all it was like they just wanted to build something, and it's like that takes so much passion anymore to become that successful where it affects society in a huge way.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a huge amount of passion to keep, because you're always going to have barriers. You're always going to have, things that can kill your momentum and stuff. And it's like, just like we were talking about with James, like it's those guys that come to the gym every day that no matter if they're going to learn something mind blowing or not, they just come in and keep grinding. And it's like, that takes passion to do that. Like, cause it's what Mike Tyson say, like, you gotta train like you love it.
Yeah.
When you actually hate it, like, and you can't do that without passion.
Yeah.
And if you're egoless, like, you don't have that passion, can't exist. So
I love it. All right. That was a solid, I enjoyed that conversation. I feel like we went to some cool places and different places than last time.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
hope I didn't say the same thing.
No, not at all. So folks, thank you very much for listening. I feel like Kansas City has a new handle on Instagram. Is that true, or is it?
Yeah. We lost our old page, so it's 10th Planet KC.
Is it 10? I want to make sure I tell people right, but I also don't have
it's
any
so
here.
new. I don't have it memorized.
10 PKC or 10? Here, I'll get it, folks.
It is 10P Kansas City.
10P Kansas City.
Yep.
Go check them out if you're ever in Kansas City. These guys are a great place to come roll and hang out. And, I hope that there's been some value to those of you who aren't into the jiu-jitsu stuff or the martial arts stuff, because I see it as a jumping off point in many things. Like it is not the one thing that I focus on all day, every day, but it has taught me a lot of lessons into other things that I'm into, and I think there's value in it. So screw you guys who say we're getting too deep about jiu-jitsu because it's fun. So thanks for listening. I'll have lots more episodes coming, some jiu-jitsu, some hunting. We may even have, I don't want to preview all the fun things we're going to do, but there's going to be some good stuff. So stay tuned. As always, we will see you on the next episode.